At Dad's funeral, Stepmother announced I wasn't his real daughter. The DNA test said otherwise. The funeral home smelled of lilies and lies. 200 people packed into rows of cushioned chairs, tissues in hand, waiting to say goodbye to William Thorne, beloved businessman, community pillar, and my father. At the podium stood my stepmother Veronica, dressed in designer black that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, preparing to deliver what everyone expected would be a touching eulogy. My name is Sasha Thorne, and I sat in the front row, genuinely mourning my father while about to discover that even his funeral would become a battlefield. Veronica had always been theatrical, but her performance that day deserved an Oscar for sheer audacity. She dabbed at dry eyes, clutched the podium with manicured nails, and began with the words that should have warned me. Before we celebrate William's life, it's time for truth. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Truth had an ominous ring at a funeral. She turned to look directly at me, her expression shifting from fake grief to real malice. For 28 years, William raised a child he believed was his. But I can no longer let this deception continue. My blood turned to ice water. Beside me, my husband James grabbed my hand. Veronica held up a manila folder triumphantly. Sasha is not William's biological daughter. I have proof, DNA results showing she shares no genetic relationship with the man she called Dad. The gasps were immediate and horrified. Phones appeared in hands, no doubt recording what was becoming the most shocking funeral in our town's history. My mother's sister, Aunt Linda, actually stood up from her seat in row 5, her face purple with rage. How dare you, at his funeral? The truth matters more than timing, Veronica continued, her voice carrying over the growing murmur. William's estate should go to his real family, not to a stranger who perpetrated a decades-long fraud. Real family. She meant herself and her son Brandon, my half-brother who sat smirking in the second row, already calculating his doubled inheritance. I stood slowly, my legs surprisingly steady. The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes tracking my movement as I walked to the podium where Veronica stood clutching her evidence. Funny, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. The court-ordered paternity test from the custody battle you seem to have forgotten about says something very different. Veronica's triumphant expression flickered. What custody battle? There was no. The one from 15 years ago, I continued, pulling out my phone. When you tried to get full custody of Brandon by claiming Dad was an unfit parent. You demanded paternity tests for both Brandon and me, hoping to prove Dad wasn't Brandon's biological father so you could cut him out of Brandon's life. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. The tests came back showing Brandon was definitely Dad's son, I said, projecting the document from my phone to the funeral home's memorial screen where a slideshow of Dad's photos had been playing. And so was I. 99.9% probability of paternity. Court certified. Judge Watson presiding. The document filled the screen, official seals and all. There it was in black and white. William Thorne was confirmed as my biological father. But that's not the interesting part, I continued, turning to face the audience while Veronica stood frozen. The interesting part is this email my dad sent me 3 weeks ago, when he knew the cancer was winning. I swiped to the email, his words appearing on the screen. My dearest Sasha, if you're reading this at my funeral, it means Veronica has done exactly what I expected. She's been planning to contest my will since my diagnosis. I had my lawyer install security cameras in my home office after I caught her photographing documents. What she doesn't know is that I've seen the fake DNA test she commissioned. Dr. Marcus Webb, check his license. It was revoked 5 years ago. The real documents are in Safety Deposit Box 472 at First National, including the custody battle records she thinks were sealed forever. I'm sorry you have to deal with this, but I wanted you prepared. All my love. Dad. P.S. Brandon doesn't know about her plan. Don't blame him for her greed. The silence was absolute. Then Aunt Linda started a slow clap that spread through the room like wildfire. Veronica's face had gone from pale to crimson. You can't. That's private correspondence, she sputtered. So is DNA information, I replied calmly. But you made it public. At my father's funeral. In front of his entire community. Brandon stood up from his seat, his face shocked. Mom, what the hell? You said. You told me we were just going to read his eulogy. Shut up, Brandon. Veronica hissed. But Brandon was walking toward the podium now, his expression morphing from confusion to rage. You used Dad's funeral to try to steal Sasha's inheritance? You told me she knew, that she agreed to step aside. She doesn't deserve it. Veronica exploded, her mask finally slipping completely. I was married to him for 12 years. I earned that money. Not his precious daughter from his first marriage. Earned it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You signed a prenup. You get the house in Florida and a generous monthly allowance. But Dad's business, his investments, the family properties, those were always meant for his children. You knew that when you married him. Veronica grabbed the folder she'd brought, waving it frantically. This test is real. Dr. Webb is a respected. Dr. Webb is in federal prison, a voice called from the back. Everyone turned to see a man in a dark suit standing by the door. Agent Carver, FBI. We've been investigating Dr. Webb for fabricating documents for estate fraud. We'll need you to come with us. The folder slipped from Veronica's hands, papers scattering across the funeral home floor. As she was led out in handcuffs at my father's funeral, she turned back one last time. He loved me more, she screamed. More than your dead mother, more than you. I picked up the microphone she'd dropped. Maybe he did love you once. But love and trust are different things. And the cameras he installed in his office after catching you going through his files suggest he didn't trust you at all. The FBI agent paused at my words. Cameras? I smiled grimly. Check with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Patterson. He has 16 hours of footage of Veronica photographing documents, meeting with Dr. Webb, and discussing how to, what was the phrase, eliminate the problem of William's brat. Brandon sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The funeral guests sat in stunned silence, processing the soap opera that had just unfolded at what should have been a solemn occasion. I returned to the podium, looking out at the sea of shocked faces. My father was a good man. He deserved a better goodbye than this circus. But he also taught me to stand up to bullies and protect what's mine. So in a way, this is exactly the send-off he would have wanted, his daughter fighting for truth against a lie. For those who came to actually mourn William Thorne, not to witness whatever this was, we'll be holding a real memorial service tomorrow at his favorite spot, the lake house. No drama, no DNA tests, no FBI. Just stories about a man who loved his family, built a business from nothing, and apparently knew his second wife was a snake long before she showed her fangs. The funeral director, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes, tentatively approached. Ms. Thorne, should we continue with the burial? Yes, I said firmly. Dad's waited long enough. And Veronica's already taken up too much of his day. As we filed out to the cemetery, Brandon caught up with me. Sasha, I swear I didn't know. She told me you were okay with everything, that you wanted to travel and didn't want the responsibility. I studied my half-brother, 22, spoiled but not malicious, more weak than evil. Dad's will splits everything between us, Brandon. 50-50. He loved us both, even if your mother only loved his money. His eyes filled with tears. He did. He did. And he'd want us to look out for each other, especially now. We stood side by side as they lowered my father's casket, the real mourners having separated from the gossip seekers. The pastor said words about resurrection and eternal life, but I was thinking about earthly justice and the satisfaction of preparation. That night, I found more emails from Dad, sent to my lawyer but dated for release after his death. He'd documented everything, Veronica's affairs, her hidden assets, her meetings with divorce lawyers before his diagnosis. He'd known exactly who she was but stayed for Brandon's sake. Let her think she's winning, he'd written. But make sure Sasha has everything she needs to protect herself. The truth has a way of surfacing, especially at funerals. People show their worst selves when they think the dead can't speak. But Dad had spoken, through security cameras and saved documents, and a daughter who'd learned his lessons about fighting smart, not just hard. Veronica was charged with attempted estate fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy. Dr. Webb, already in prison, got additional years. The fake DNA test became evidence in a federal case about manufactured documents in inheritance disputes. Brandon and I grew closer, bonding over our shared loss and his gradual recognition of who his mother really was. He used his half of the inheritance to go to medical school. He wanted to be the kind of doctor who couldn't be bought. The lake house where we held Dad's real memorial became our annual gathering spot. Every year on the anniversary of his death, the people who actually loved him, not his money, come together to share stories and raise a glass. And every year, someone tells the story of the funeral where a grieving daughter exposed her stepmother's lies with receipts, recordings, and the FBI on speed dial. It gets better with each telling, though nothing could be stranger than the truth. Dad would have loved it. He always said the best revenge wasn't getting mad or getting even. It was getting proof. And then making sure everyone sees it at the most inconvenient moment possible. His funeral definitely qualified.